just patches and patches of open land.
Ladies, gentlemen, and Haradrim of all ages, it has unsurprisingly been a busy few days in the world of Diablo 4. We knew that a patch was coming, but we had the patch notes for it a number of days ahead of time, so we thought it should be quite tame, right? No balance changes anywhere to be seen in those notes, very little that seemed to even matter more than being a slight convenience addition to the game, slight quality of life changes. Well, things shown early are subject to change, and sometimes we might even be responsible for that. So let's have a look at this new patch and talk about the main important things. We'll also talk about some recent hilarious server-side shutdowns of certain aspects of the game, an extremely important undocumented change from the patch as well, which is genuinely a good thing for everyone, and I'm just absolutely flabbergasted that they didn't put it in the notes itself. Let's get started then, before we even dive into the patch itself, that there is another patch already in the works for the game in the next couple of weeks. Here is a blue post from Adam Fletcher, the Global Community Development Director of Developing Global Communities. In this, he is responding about a bug where some players can't have the Druid Spirit offerings drop, when obviously that is just a really big deal, as that cuts off their entire class mechanic entirely, but the response says this is a known issue, they are working on this, and that the fix is expected to be in patch 1.1.3, which is coming in a few weeks. This post was nearly a week ago now, so cut that off, and that means probably in the next couple of weeks we'll be having 1.1.3 dropping, so not all that long from now at all. Obviously this gives us very little idea of what will be in the patch itself, but it does give us a timeline on when the patch will be, which is always nice to see. With that out of the way then, let's talk about patch 1.1.2, which dropped last night after having preliminary patch notes dropped last week. The main section here, the really important one, is gameplay updates. Malignant monster respawn time reduced from 5 seconds down to 2 seconds. This is actually pretty nice. I could definitely make more complaints. I mean, I don't understand why it can't be 1 second or even near instant after you click on the heart personally. I mean, the only real negative that I have towards the Malignant heart system as a whole is that the respawn timer exists, so I want that to be as short as possible, but 2 seconds is much shorter than 5, so I guess we'll have to take what we get here. It's a positive change, which is definitely better than nothing. Then the second change here is players are now in the trade channel by default. And honestly, this is just straight up really funny to me, but we'll get into why afterwards. Then we just have a long list of general bug fixes, so many different things, fixing nightmare resets, for example, some fixes for certain Druid things, quest fixes, so many quest fixes, UI fixes as well, and just before the bottom of the UI fixes, you can see the line, the tooltips for the Tal Rasha and Great Feast Malignant Hearts now correctly state that their bonuses are additive instead of multiplicative. Yet, as of the moment of release, these notes had an update, and the main change was the removal of this line to be replaced with something else, because you will actually also notice in the miscellaneous section of the notes now, there is the addition of this line, the Tal Rasha and Great Feast Malignant Hearts now match their tooltip and are correctly calculated as multiplicative instead of additive. Here is Adam Fletcher in a tweet confirming this. This is a straight up buff to these two Malignant Hearts by quite a fair amount. The jump from being additive to a multiplier is massive, and they spring-loaded this change in the last couple hours before the patch out of nowhere, and it means that there are actual genuine buffs in this patch that weren't expected to be there in the first place. This was not supposed to be a patch that affected balance at all. So how did this all happen then? Because it's a bit odd, right? Well, my personal theory, honestly, is someone on the UI team noticed that these hearts were calculated as additive instead of the multiplier, which is what they put in the tooltip. They thought that they made a mistake, so they put forward a fix to the tooltip down to additive in the patch notes. Then someone on the heart design team saw that patch note and said, "What do you mean? Of course they're multiplicative, that's what we wanted." Then checked the actual calculations, realized that they maybe made a whoopsie, and now they're going to be multipliers, as they were always supposed to be. And, well, it worries me how accurate a possibility that sounds when I lay it all out. The only other option really is potentially if players were loud enough about being sad this wasn't a multiplier in the first place when these patch notes came out originally, maybe the actual dev team responded by saying, yeah, screw it, why not? Let's actually make it a multiplier because that's what people want. We'll never know which of these two it is for sure, but I think that those are the only two actually likely scenarios. Either way, buffs to a Sword Cart and a Necro Heart. Congratulations to you both, you've actually gotten better after this patch. Other than that, the patch notes were pretty uneventful as far as major changes go, at least. More just bug fixing one bit at a time through all the stuff that they can't do on the back-end server side of things, just slowly working through the long list of bugs they clearly want to get rid of. Speaking of which, it's time to hear why making the trade channel, joined by default, is funny to me. Trading as a mechanic in Diablo 4 for was disabled yesterday, and it lasted about 24 hours before it was re-enabled. The reason for this was the developer team noticed an item and gold duplication exploit that was abusing the trading system. So what they did was just close down the entire trading system until they could fix it. This also came with a warning that anyone abusing these things would of course be actioned upon, which feels like such a medieval way of saying what they're trying to get across. But yeah, you probably shouldn't do these things or else you might get trading shut down for the entire player base and then lose your account. So, you know, probably not worth it, even for the slight amount of gain. The response to this was relatively quick though from the developers. Trading was re-enabled last night, a few hours after the patch hit, so they got it done even around the patch releasing itself, which is sort of impressive. That said, I still find it genuinely hilarious that at the time that the patch went live that forces every player into trade chat channel by default, the entire mechanic of trading within the game was not functioning in the first place. That's just some real delicious irony of timing right there. I love it when things like this happen. Then finally we have something actually quite exciting that was noticed by the community itself, which is an undocumented change since the patch hit last night, so a change that was in 1.1.2. Enchanting costs on new items seem to have been lowered across the board by a fair amount. If you had already rerolled the item before the patch, it doesn't retroactively lower the cost that you have it at, but for fresh enchanting, people are saying it could be as much as a 40% reduction in the increased in cost per reroll. So while this is still materially very expensive with the cost of veiled crystals and forgotten souls, the actual gold cost of rerolling has gone down such a notable amount, just completely silently within this patch. They didn't make any note of it, they didn't say anything about it, which is actually, it's a really big deal for something to not show up like this, because it makes min-maxing your gear far easier than it was before, and it's an actually giant thing that people were complaining about since the season started. And so in the end, realistically then, patch 1.1.2 is a really genuinely good patch. It has a number of helpful things for players, even some buffs for some classes. They were just real stealthy with all the good stuff, you know? All in all, this patch gives us reduced respawn timers on malignant monsters, so we don't have to waste as much of our time, which is a good thing. A bug fix for Druid that is a slight buff to the boulder build, sure. A number of bug fixes that have at least a bit of an effect on the average player experience, so it's nice to have, of course. The less bugs there are in the game, the better it is for everyone. But then there were also massive buffs to 2 class-specific malignant hearts, turning additive calculations into multiplicative for that gigantic potency boost and difference between those two types of calculations, which could actually shake up things just a little bit for those classes, being sorcerer and necromancer respectively, of course. And this change wasn't revealed to us until just about before when the patch went live, even though the patch notes were up a number of days early, and then we just got the fully undocumented change where item enchantment costs seem to have been reduced a fairly massive amount, and they feel just incredible now in comparison to what they were before. That is a number of good things from a patch that has no bad things as far as I can see myself. And that's pretty much it for today, everyone, really. News centered around one surprisingly big patch, the reveal of another patch coming in the next couple of weeks following this as well, a seemingly sizable client patch. This is going to be 1.1.3 that's coming up. We know very little about the patch other than that it exists and a vague timeline on its arrival, but it is coming, and if it is anything like 1.1.2 was, then I absolutely welcome its arrival. Even if the buffs are sort of hidden, at least there's buffs, right? There's also the new trade system duping exploit that was caught and then fixed incredibly quickly. Yes, it sucks that it was there in the first place. Duping is not a good thing for the health of the game, and the fact that there's a bug in the system of trading itself that allowed it is obviously an issue, but at least the fix for it was a speedy one. Then of course, just the surprisingly undocumented nature of arguably the biggest change in the entirety of patch 1.1.2, which will genuinely change the feel of certain parts of the game for every player that interacts with it. I hope you've enjoyed this breakdown of the news from the last couple of days then, and of course, as usual, I'll likely be back in the next couple of days when they suddenly drop a hotfix that makes horses usable in dungeons or something like that, you know? Like if you like the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.